One of the more important phones of the year is always a Galaxy Ultra, and in 2026, it's the Galaxy S26 Ultra. Malaysia has 3 variants, maxing out with 1TB and 16 gigs of RAM at almost 8,000 ringgit, just 200 ringgit more from the Galaxy S25 Ultra last year. As always, I go for the midpoint, 512 gig variant, and the sticker price is 67.99. After locking in every possible voucher and using bonuses during the pre-order phase, the final price I paid was 49.39, which is insane value and makes it extremely competitive. I'm gonna break it down to 2 sections: what's good and what needs to be improved. I'm Zen the Geek, welcome to the video. Performance and battery life. The Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 for Galaxy has a 39% faster NPU, fully ready, absolutely speedy for whichever AI agent you choose. Perplexity, Gemini, Bixby, all of it. This also powers the Now Nudge, which proactively suggests actions, more about that later. For gaming, it locked in expected performance, while battery life takes the lead. If you're playing a game like Zenazone Zero, you're gonna get 60 FPS with maxed out graphics with no micro stutters for at least the first 20 minutes, while throttles kick in about 20 to 30 minutes from then, and it drops to the high 50s. It's also pretty impressive in thermals because it only stayed up to 40 degrees warm in and out of 3 tests. Genshin also stays pegged at 60 FPS on max settings, including native resolution via Game Booster Plus, and throttles only after the first half hour, so at least your dailies will be a smooth, beautiful experience. PUBG Mobile, easy, 120 FPS on smooth graphics, but the cool part is that the S26 Ultra showcased really low touch latency, which made it really feel like a gaming phone. The 8 Elite Gen 5 for Galaxy here really earns its rep, showcasing just how well its efficiency cores are doing the work. Battery life is also impressive, even if it's just still 5,000 mAh. It's Samsung's time to yet again prove that software optimization equals good battery life, rather than just shoving bigger batteries into the phone. On normal mode, you're at least guaranteed 7 hours of screen on time, while low power mode pushes it to 9 to 10 hours, especially on a busy day. Charging is also improved to 60 watts from 45 watts, wirelessly 25 watts from 15 watts. It's a small step in the competitive space, but a huge one for Samsung, something everyone will appreciate. But the best part is, it's actually fast. You get about 81% of charge in the first half hour, and it fully tops up in about 50 minutes. But you're gonna need a 5A rated cable and at least a PPS charger with a 60 watt profile. Or you're just gonna buy one of the new chargers from Samsung that supports that. Most competitors in the space are in the 40-minute range, so a 10-minute difference seems negligible when it counts. Over 80% in the first half hour is really good. Finally, it's the fact that the S26 Ultra has an incredibly fast USB port, USB 4, making it technically up to 4 times faster than USB 3. Make sure you transfer your data using a compatible cable and the port on your other system. And this benefit carries to its DisplayPort 1.4, which now supports DeX in a native 4K 60 rather than going through good lock to achieve the same. Content creators, make sure you note and test whether the SSDs that you have on hand can fully utilize the S26 Ultra's faster bandwidth, as I noticed that anything up to 3 years ago kind of acts up. And my suspicion is the Gen 2x2's controller is actually pretty sensitive about it. Photo and video. I don't have big changes to share with you on the list of hardware improvements. The megapixel count hasn't changed much, but the main lens is now significantly faster with an f1.4 aperture. 47% more light hits the sensor compared to the 25 Ultra, resulting in much cleaner night shots and more natural detail retention. It's still not perfect, but it's heading in the right direction. I forgive that since this is a refinement model, just that the aperture and new processor are improving things in their own right, which makes sense for 24 Ultra owners who are looking to jump rather than people who are already on the 25 Ultra who should be more than satisfied now. Ultrawide remains a strong camera with excellent detail, dynamic range, and slightly punchy colors. For Samsungs, I always appreciate the ultrawide for having the least amount of distortion because the distortion correction is pretty good and it shows. Selfies are also improved with a newer, wider lens that offers natural detail and sharpness, punchy colors as well, and a snappy autofocus that also delivered in low light. That's good. As usual, 4K video looks amazing, producing sharp video and excellent audio. Perfect for content creators even if they forgot their mic at home. The audio cleanup feature does very well here. Take a look. You'll also get to shoot log like last time with built-in LUTs, and you can even add your own cube files as well to see how the final look will be like while you shoot it in the flat log mode, of course. However, the final boss here is APV, which is groundbreaking. Unlike the standard H.265 codec, which uses interframe compression, APV uses intraframe. Every single frame is encoded as an individual image, and this makes scrubbing through DaVinci Resolve or Premiere Pro really smooth because you're not forcing the CPU to need to calculate all these frames in between. This uses significantly higher bitrate to preserve that detail. If you're shooting, let's say 4K 60 APV high quality, it hits about almost 1600 Mbps, whereas the H.265 HDR is only at 52. Last but not least is the horizontal lock mode, which I think it's video stabilization in its most exaggerated form. Even if you rotate your phone, your video footage still stays incredibly stable and straight. And that's kind of like how like a gimbal or an action camera stabilizes itself. There's plenty of fun to be had. You keep spinning your phone and the footage is still straight, right? It's fun, but I haven't really found a lot of practical use for it. Unless maybe, I strap my 6,000 ringgit phone to my helmet. Otherwise, I don't think so. OneUI and AI. 7 years OS and security updates are still a plus, and the 26 Ultra comes with OneUI 8.5 out of the box, and it showed up to be not only power efficient but AI efficient as well. Circle the search is still a hot favorite of mine. I'm able to get results of multiple objects in a single image, which is a point of convenience. The Now Nudge is also expanding the Now Briefs functionality with proactive suggestions based on what you're currently doing. You're like chatting with a friend or a client via WhatsApp, and when the phone sees or detects dates and times, it will nudge you with an offer to add that meeting to your calendar. It's still a semi-manual thing to do, but that makes sense. You need to still make a choice whether you want to have that meeting or not. Otherwise, you're going to be accepting every meeting out there. The Now Brief was introduced as a virtual assistant last year that's close to what you get from a human being. Someone who will brief you on your day-to-day, as well as share some snippets of useful info like the local weather, travel times to your appointments, and whatnot. But the Now Nudge is like the work experience that you pass on to that personal assistant and gives it that training to be a proactive individual who will suggest and assist you in your meetings and your conversations. Well, you will save time with your scheduling and tasks, but you'll still need to give input, whether you're manually typing them or you're telling and dictating the AI to do it for you. It's really getting close. But that's not a selling point. Not because the 25 Ultra will possibly catch this up in an upgrade, but also the fact that this type of features still requires a level of commitment from the user to give all this input. Otherwise, your assistant will not have anything to tell you. Hence why the S26 Ultra is a better upgrade for people 2 to 4 generations ago rather than just last year. Privacy display. This is the headline feature, and it does earn points in innovation because it's a hardware implementation to the pixels itself. Privacy display significantly reduces visibility of the wide pixel, while narrow pixels still beam your content straight to your viewing angle, also known as your face. Such innovation takes a hit in the panel specs, with the workarounds being a software level once again. It's still a dynamic LTPO AMOLED 2X, 120Hz, but with a 2600 nit peak brightness. It's also no longer 10-bit in color depth, but now 8-bit with FRC. Privacy mode also makes things look a tad bit softer, with text and images not as sharp as before, and Samsung did provide at least two ways to counteract that to some degree. First, you can just set privacy display to only block incoming notifications from specific apps from your bank or from your WhatsApp, which is always going to be at the top of the display when it comes down, which is good enough for most people. Until they need to fully utilize the whole screen to view something extremely private, then you can call upon privacy display from your notification settings. Second would be both MDINE and ProScaler. Both fundamentally tackle different issues that come with such a display. MDINE works on improving color gradients and transitions to produce a depth that's closer to 10-bit that we're, missing out. ProScaler works on sharpness and contrast more, making sure mixed media content of images, videos, or texts have that crispness in them. While I could say why didn't Samsung just put a 10 to 12-bit display panel instead, my best guess, it's always going to be about costs or tech limitations. Perhaps the S26 Ultra is also a test bed to see how people receive the privacy display, and based on that feedback, they can see what kind of future direction they're going to take. Which brings me to the next segment. What didn't work? The 3x telephoto. Most images actually do look okay, but the problem is it's the S series, and as a flagship, I deserve to have high expectations, and the 3x zoom is definitely a range that I work on a lot. I know we get a better 5x and a better main, but I honestly expected that at least the 3x telephoto would get a pixel bump to maybe 12 or even 50. 10 megapixel optics really sounds dated, and I know the direction of the S26 series is to be more AI heavy, but I do still want some hardware optics to take precedence over AI post-processing of my photos. The tech is just dated for a 2026 flagship. Oh, there's also no magnets on the 26 Ultra either. The Qi2 standard is going to be even more widespread this year, and Samsung favored making a thinner, lighter flagship than to simply slap those magnets in. Again, I guess it's cost, but I didn't almost pay 5,000 ringgit for this, but if I paid sticker price, it would have been nice to have those included in there to use my accessories. The S Pen is also still Bluetooth only, and that's honestly a gripe that Samsung should really pay attention to. I'm not the only reviewer talking about this, and I'm sure it's everyone. But to be fair, you use it as a stylus to take notes or draw or circle to search. Hell yeah, it's good. But I do miss putting my phone a distance away and then using my stylus as a shutter button to take photos and videos instead. But now I have to buy a Galaxy Watch to do those things, which does add cost and not really needed. It may be a subtle way to get people into the ecosystem, but Galaxy Watches are great and reliable in their own right. People will still buy the watch if the stylus was still how it used to be. Finally, the design. But let's just calm down a bit. It's not completely bad that it's in this section, but there is some good, but it did come at a cost. The S26 Ultra is better in terms of thinness and weight because it's just 214 grams. They took away the titanium from last year and replaced it with new armor aluminum, which really takes away premium points, but you get back a lighter, slimmer build that's more desirable. It adds comfort, and it has superior heat dissipation because it's aluminum, better heat conductivity. The trade-off is just less durable. Either way, realistically, both materials will scratch and dent when you drop it. So just slap the case on, but not just for that, but also for this. This is a massive camera module at the back, and it juts out so much. It wobbles on a flat surface even more than ever. Well, such is the price for getting a slimmer build and not having to cut back on hardware specs. But yeah, just put a case on this. It's not that big a deal. Maybe I am just being a gaslighter. The upgrades are pretty modest this year, but it looks more towards quality of life, with the only innovations being the privacy display and a much improved agentic AI execution. The upgrades in hardware are standard and familiar, and its focus is now appealing towards content creators and even professional videographers, though you gotta get used to that 8-bit display when you're filming, or just connect it to an external monitor. Mobile photographers will, for the most part, appreciate the better main and 5x telephoto sensors, though they might have to accept that the Galaxy S26 Ultra is an AI-first camera phone. So if you're looking for a specific color science, this ain't it, chief. OneUI though, still magical as always, and together with the S Pen, it's still very much the only smartphone you can get with a native accessory that's so productivity focused. So people who are focusing on that aspect will still call this phone home. It will deliver a stellar, solid phone experience as always, and I truly hope that the S27 Ultra will have more up its sleeve to catch up with, you know, the harder working competition that's vying to grab some of that sweet market share. Thank you guys for watching. I'm ZenTheGeek, and I'll see you in the next video.